Its embryos are obliging to geneticists like Nipam Patel, eager to pop open the hood and check out how it's really built inside.
What you're going to see is stripes appear on the embryos.
All right.
There we go.
Ooh.
And we can see now very nicely the repeated pattern of segments. So it's a ladder-like pattern with a rung in each segment.
This is basically his spinal column?
That's right. So the whole body is organized in these very nice repeating segments.
It's the groundbreaking step in forming a fly. Just as they did with the ancient Cambrian ancestor, these genes are organizing the body into top and bottom, front and back. But they are also segmenting it into zones of activity, marking positions for organs, appendages, and limbs.
So you have certain genes that are also telling certain segments to specialize. Is that what's causing the brain to occur at one end?
That's right. So eventually, every one of these segments will actually have a unique property to it.
Whether it's in a fly or a mouse, horse or human, similar genes are laying out a body architecture, and segmentation is the method. It's also a moment when the ancient recipe for building bodies can undergo mutation, allowing for accidental genetic creativity. New shapes can come along from DNA malfunctions, causing a toolkit gene to switch on early or late, or never switch on at all.
So could you potentially turn on 2 or 3 more brains in here if you could modify that gene?
So we could do things like that, so that more of the animal could become brain, for example, or do the reverse, and get rid of the brain and turn it in so that it's identical to the abdomen instead.
So you could actually make a really smart fruit fly at this point.
Well, unfortunately, when you do those things, they die.
Oh, I guess that's not really smart.
A mutation causing a fly with 2 brains might not work outside Hollywood, but subtler changes, say a slightly larger wing, or a second set of wings, may have real advantages, and that new design could catch on. Creatures and their body parts aren't invented from scratch. They evolve when their genetic networks are modified by ancient toolkit genes. Evolution of form is a matter of teaching very old genes new tricks.
If you take a look at the difference between a mouse and a cat, the difference is not new types of cells, but change in organization. Somewhere along the line, those instructions were modified, not in a way that scrambled them, but in a way that gave subtle changes to lead to the differences between organisms.
Of course, not every organism can stack up against the environment. The genetic toolkit builds bodies that are, at best, hopeful possibilities. Fossil beds are littered with one-hit wonders, evolutionary experiments that prove to be maladapted dead ends.
Genes propose, and the environment decides. That genome is not a static thing. It's constantly roiling around, changing where genes are turned on and off. And whether these new traits that are constantly being pushed out there, whether they're accepted, depends on the environment. That, baby, is evolution.
Evolution has taken millions of twists and turns. How did toolkit genes that made an ancient worm get reconfigured to eventually make the parts that make us? Our hands, our hearts, our upright, naked bodies, and ultimately, the brilliant brain in our heads. Inside the job plan that makes each and every animal on Earth, even human ones, is a common toolbox of genes, the hammers and saws of DNA, arriving and departing at just the right stages of development to get the job done. It's as if nature ran a body shop, banging out model after model from knockoff parts. Game inventor Will Wright is wondering how the toolkit played a role in the evolution of key parts of our bodies, like that cool grasping tool at the end of our arms.
So evolution has discovered these toolkit genes that it's using to construct bodies in interesting, novel, but yet very simple ways. So I'm wondering how the human body got to where it is, and the human hand, what stages did it go through to kind of get to where it is today?
In fact, The evolutionary stages that will one day lead to something so versatile as our hand really got going with a fish. For decades, paleontologist Neil Shubin had been searching for a missing link, fossils from the first of our ancestors to walk on land. Then something extraordinary happened.
It was July 2004 in the Arctic. We were digging in the rocks, and one of my colleagues calls out, "Hey guys, what's this?" When I first saw this thing, it was one of the most remarkable experiences in my scientific career.
Shubin had come face to face with a 375-million-year-old intermediary between fish and amphibian, and a piece of our own evolutionary past.
This is an unbelievably special kind of fish. Not every fish had a neck. In fact, this is the first fish that had a neck. This is the first fish that had a wrist.
Shubin and his colleagues named the creature Tiktaalik, a native Arctic word for large freshwater fish.
So if you look at Tiktaalik, what you see is, the upper arm, forearm, and the wrist. I mean, just compare it to my own body. Here's my forearm. Here's the wrist of Tiktaalik. Here's my wrist. Here are the palm bones of Tiktaalik. Here's the palm bone. Here's my own palm bones. I mean, these are pieces of my own body seen all in a fish.
Hands are an extraordinary human tool. Yet within it are component parts modified over millions of years. But why did the change happen here, in this fish, at this time? After traveling from one genetics lab to another, Will Wright can in turn offer Spore's unique visualization tools to a scientist. Using the game's creature creator, Neil Shubin will first try to bring his prehistoric fishapod, Tiktaalik, to life. And then we'll get a sense of the evolutionary forces in play that would one day lead to the human hand.
Let me do a cleaner slate. I'll just take a body.
Grab the arm.
I see. So I'm like,
Yeah, there you go.
I'm making a Tiktaalik.
Pick the mouth from the second palate on the very top,
There.
yeah.
Okay.
Some are armivores, some are carnivores.